Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. To go over a few housekeeping items for technical support, in the event of technical issues arising, a traditional conference line can be used. And here's the number below, as well as the ID that can be used. Any technical questions, look down to hit the chat button and submit any technical issues or technical questions to Zoom technical support. As a reminder, all lines have been muted. Event audio and video are being recorded. For content-related questions, they could be submitted via the Q&A button in the middle of your screen, on the bottom of the screen. The OIE formula team will make every attempt to answer your specific policy and/or statute-based questions in real time during this engagement session. In the event we are not able to provide in-depth responses during this event, we will provide the full list of questions and answers on our websites. If you have additional questions after this engagement session ends, please email them to crystal.moore@ed.gov. And now I'll turn it over to Julian Guerrero, Director of Office of Indian Education. Julian?
Thank you so much. This is Julian Guerrero, Director for the Office of Indian Education. I just want to say welcome to all for joining us virtually. I do appreciate everyone's attendance, and for those of you who are starting to trickle in, again, welcome. As Director of the OIE, a lot of my work has always been focused on what we can do as an office to support the role of our parent committees, support our grantees, and continue to provide meaningful technical assistance that humanizes the way we do our work and modernizes the processes by which we deliver the services. So today's engagement session is to have an open dialogue regarding the IPC roles and various types of applications available, such as application requirements for an LEA, school-wide, and or consortia applying in lieu of the LEA. And today's presentation, we're going to cover which entities are required to establish those Indian parent committees and strategies for IPCs to address a wide variety of concerns with key stakeholders in that collaboration. That being said, I want to hand it off to the next speaker, which I believe might be Crystal, but could be wrong. The next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Director Guerrero. I appreciate that. Before we get started fully, I'd like to first highlight our OIE leadership staff. We have, that will be on the screen here in a minute, we have our Ruth Ryder, who is our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Formula Grants in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. You could go one more slide, please. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. So yes, Ms. Ruth Ryder's on the left there of the screen. And next to her, we have Director Guerrero, who you just heard from. He is a citizen of the Kiowa and Comanche tribes in Oklahoma. And then next to him, far right, myself, Crystal Moore, Supervisory Group Leader for the Formula Team, covering these Indian parent committees under the Office of Indian Education and the U.S. Department of Education. And we're all housed under the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Next slide, please. I would also like to highlight our OIE formula program officers that help manage these grants and support you in the management and support of the Indian parent committees. So on the top left here, we have Mrs. Annabelle Toledo. She is our program officer assigned to our grantees, basically east of the Mississippi River or the eastern half of the United States. You'll find the states that she covers as well as her email and phone number underneath her photo there on the slide. And then we have myself, then next to me is Miss Wanda Lee. She is our program officer for all of our grantees in the state of Oklahoma. Underneath her, we have Mr. Gregory Hinesley, and he is our program officer assigned to all of the states, basically in the Northeast region, including Alaska. And next to him, we have Mrs. Terry Nelson. She is our program officer assigned to all of our grantees in the Southwest region of the United States. Okay, next slide, please. I would now like to highlight where you can find all of our OIE formula publications and notifications. This is where we curate all of our more static content. There are some timely notifications, but for the most part, we archive our current and the most recent year worth of our content from our office here on this website. It's under the oese.ed.gov/offices/Office of Indian Education. Some dashes in there too, so that link is active. We will make this presentation and recording available on that website as well as the website on the next slide. So if you can go to the next slide, please. All right, and this website we maintain, hopefully you all are very familiar with this one as well. It is our community of practice website that our PSC, our Partner Support Center, helps maintain for us. And this is our more dynamic content. So this is being continually updated with all of our current forms, notifications, that sort of thing. It's more of a living website full of static as well as dynamic content for you. So, next slide, please. Here on the screen, you'll see that we fund comprehensive programs. Our Office of Indian Ed funds comprehensive programs that are designed to meet the unique cultural and language educational needs of American Indian and Alaska Native students and ensure that all students meet the challenging state academic standards. You'll hear us say that quite often. That is our mission. All right, apologies. So we have continued that practice of publishing our state map of all of our grantees for the SY 22-23 Formula Award. Here's our overview, and you can view this state map that is full of the state allocations, the number of grantees per state, as well as their Indian student count. You can see this map that's shown here on the slide, and it's available on our website it's the OESE Ed website, and it's under awards. It's also on the Community of Practice website. Most of our grantees find this very helpful. And the top right of this, this graphic, there's an overall summary of our FY22 awards. Okay, next slide, please. One other graphic that we thought would be quite helpful to you is this SY 22-23 OIE Formula Award Overview. We've recently started publishing this one, but it gives you an idea of what types of entities that we do fund. The vast majority are in that sky blue, which is 1,088 of our 1,276 grants. And the vast majority again go to LEAs. We have one Bureau grant and contract school. That means that the Bureau helps to operate them and support them. We have a Bureau operated schools sector there of 132. We have 27 LEA consortiums. So that means several LEAs got together and apply as one consortium. And then we have 28 tribes applying in lieu of LEAs. And again, for a total of 1,276 SY22 or FY22 awards. All right, next slide, please. So the OIE this year has significantly updated per the red font you see on the screen, and it may be a little small, but again, we will make this presentation available to you. So we've updated our IPCA form, our Indian Parent Committee Approval Form. This is the purpose of this entire webinar, is this form, and then all of the requirements go into this form. So we've updated significantly for the FY23 easy application cycle. Our goal is to clarify the instructions and requirements in order to reduce the number of post-award modifications that OIE sends out during our review cycle. So during our review, oftentimes we'll have concerns or there's errors or omissions on this form. And so we are required to require you to modify your form to make it compliant with the statute. And while the form is not fully approved yet, we expect it to be very soon. And so as soon as it is fully approved, we will make it available on our websites. We just wanted you to know up front that this would be coming. There's no substantive changes. All of the reporting requirements, all of the same requirements for names and participation are still there. Certainly the 51% statutory requirement is still there, but we've clarified the instructions significantly in hopes to avoid ongoing confusion while entities are filling out this Indian Parent Committee approval form. So stay tuned. There will be lots more coming about this, but we wanted you to know that those items were coming. Okay, next slide, please. All right, I will now transition the presentation over to my wonderful colleague, Annabelle Toledo. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, and good afternoon, everyone. This slide covers the Easy Part 1 process. Here is a quick look at the overall process you will need to complete for your Easy Part 1 application, with the first steps starting at the left of the arrow, moving to the right end. Next slide, please. Formula Grant Easy Part 2 process. Now we will review the steps in the Easy Part 2 process. The formula grant process for the Part 2 is divided into 6 data entries sections. A supplemental form upload page for LEAs to upload their Indian Parent Committee approval form, and the certification process. We will review each of these sections in further detail over the next several slides. Next slide, please. Document Easy Part 2 User Guide also includes step-by-step instructions for completing the Easy Part 2 application with screenshots. Next slide, please. The post-award grant roles and responsibilities. The day-to-day operations are typically handled by the project director / coordinator, who may or may not be the superintendent or other designated school employee. The business manager typically makes the drawdowns and keeps the DUNS numbers, which is now the UEI, active for Indian education. The superintendent, other high-level administrator, or tribal chief review the complete Part 2 application and certify it. They also signature and date formula budget revisions and late liquidation requests. Next slide, please. Local needs assessment. Applicants are required to base their proposed project on a comprehensive local assessment and prioritization of the unique educational and culturally related academic needs of the American Indian Alaska Native students for whom the LEA is providing an education. This is under ESEA 6114C3. The purpose of a needs assessment is to gather information about the specialized and unique educational and culturally related needs of eligible Indian students It provides direction for the development of the program to meet specific needs. For more information on developing a local needs assessment, see the FAQs Part 1. Next slide, please. Meaningful collaboration, tribal and open consultation, IPC intersection. This document compares Title VI-A meaningful collaboration requirements with that of tribal consultation, 8538, as well as open consultation, 6114C3C, and the Indian Parent Committee. Next slide, please. You can find that table document on our Easy COP site, Community of Practice site, as shown here. Next slide, please. All applications must be developed in open consultation, including through public hearings with parents of Indian children and teachers, representatives of Indian tribes on Indian lands located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve. If such tribes have any children in such schools, Indian organizations, and if appropriate, Indian students from secondary schools, including through public hearings held by such agency to provide to the individuals described in this paragraph a full opportunity to understand the program and to offer recommendations regarding the program. Open consultation is a process to gather public input from stakeholders on matters affecting them. The process improves efficiency, transparency, and public involvement, raising awareness of key issues to groups that add value. I will now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Ms. Wanda Lee.
Thank you, Annabelle, and good afternoon, everyone. State assessment data. All applicants must provide the results of each assessment referred to in subparagraph A. 1, the committee described in subsection C4. 2, the community served by the local educational agency. And 3, the Indian tribes whose children are served by the local educational agency, consistent with section 444 of the General Education Provisions Act. That's 20 United States Code 1232G. Commonly referred to as the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. Next slide, please. IPC requirement. LEA applicants must develop Title I project and easy application with the participation of the Indian Parent Committee. The written approval is collected on the IPC Indian Parent Committee approval form. We usually say IPCA form. The written approval of the IPC must be obtained before Part 2 closes. Next slide, please. All local education agencies, LEAs, including those in a consortium that receive Title VI Indian Education Formula grants, are required to establish an Indian Parent Committee, and those Indian Parent Committees compose bylaws to establish how the Parent Committee will operate. Did you know that 86% of the Title VI grantees have Indian Parent Committees? Next slide, please. The first section of the IPC approval form is section 1, Indian Parent Committee application approval. Note, this section is to be completed by the Indian Parent Committee. The directions are all LEA applicants must develop the project with the participation of a parent committee selected in accordance with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act Section 6114C and with the written approval of the parent committee, ESEA Section 6114C4. Attestation. The Indian Parent Committee attests that the IPC for the above entity participated fully in the planning as well as the development of the application for the Indian Education Grant Funds and approves the proposed program as either a regular formula grant program or a Title I school-wide program or an integration of services under ESEA Section 6116. The IPC approval date confirms when the proposed program was approved. The IPC also attests that it had an opportunity to review the program in a timely fashion and that the program is consistent with the purpose of the Formula Grant Program for Indian students. If a Title I school-wide application is submitted and approved by the IPC understands that the Title VI project funds will be combined with Title I and other federal programming. In doing so, the IPC has determined that including project funds within a Title I school-wide program would not diminish the availability of culturally related activities for Indian students. The IPC determines that the program will directly enhance the educational experience of Indian students. ESEA sections 6114C4C and 6115C. Please note, applicants can determine who the chairperson designee that will sign their IPC's bylaws, should the bylaws exist for their IPC. If the IPC has no bylaws, the signer is chosen informally and noted in the meeting minutes. Next slide, please. The second section of the IPC approved form is Section 2, Indian Parent Committee membership list. Note, this section is to be completed by either the IPC or the LEA applicant. Directions. All LEA applicants will provide a list of printed names of all current members of the IPC. ESEA section 6114C4 requires the IPC to be comprised of parents and family members of Indian children in the LEA schools, also representatives of Indian tribes on Indian lands located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve if such tribes have any children in such schools. Also, teachers in the schools, last but not least, if appropriate, Indian students attending secondary schools of the agency. More than 1/2 of the total number of Indian Parent Committee members must be parents and family members of eligible Indian children. Next slide, please. In regards to program personnel, the applicant will use the best available talents and resources, including persons from the Indian community. And that is Section 6114C3B of Part A, Title VI. They will also set forth such policies and procedures, including policies and procedures relating to the hiring of personnel, as will ensure that the program for which assistance is sought will be operated and evaluated in consultation with and with the involvement of parents and family members of the children and representatives of the area to be served. Section 6114 C8 of Part A, Title 6. This applies to all applicants, not just LEAs. ESEA legislation, which highlights in the program assurances that the applicant downloads, signs, and also keeps on file. Next slide, please. IPC membership will include the following. 1, parents and family members of Indian children in the local educational agencies' schools. 2, representatives of Indian tribes on Indian lands located within 50 miles of any school that the agency will serve if such tribes have any children in such school. 3, teachers in the schools. And fourthly, if appropriate, Indian students attending secondary schools of the agency. Again, section 6114 C4 of Part A, Title 6, which is the statute. More than 1/2, greater than 50%, or 51% or more of the total number of the Indian Parent Committee members must consist of American Indian parents and family members of eligible Indian students. The other 49% of the membership should be tribal representatives, a teacher and or student. School or LE administrators and Title VI staff should not serve on the parent committee. Individuals who have a parent conflicts of interest should not serve as a member of the parent committee. Membership should be consistent with the bylaws. Consider having at least 2 parents and or family members, a teacher or student. It is recommended that the membership number be manageable and appropriate for the number of Indian students being served. Next slide, please. Who were considered family members? Parents, guardians, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and others related to the child may be considered family members of the Indian students. Does every Indian Parent Committee need a tribal representative? If there is a tribe within 50 miles of the grant that has students in said project, then at least 1 tribal representative is required to participate. Does every Indian Parent Committee need a student representative for secondary? Although it is not required, it is recommended that a high school representative be added if high school is the top instructional level in the school. The bylaws will need to be edited to allow for these changes. Every grantee should consider what alterations need to be made in their program to accommodate these changes. Next slide, please. The third section of the IPC approval form is Section 3, Indian Parent Committee bylaws. Directions. Within 6 months of receiving the award, the LEA assures the IPC will adopt and abide by reasonable bylaws for the conduct of the activities of the committee. ESEA Act Section 6114C4D. No additional action or signature is needed on this section of the IPC approval form. Users may upload a copy of their IPC bylaws in Easy Application Part 2 if they are available, but they are not required to do so. Next slide, please. All Title VI LEA grantees are required to have parent committees and must establish bylaws. None of the other eligible entities are required to have an IPC and bylaws. The bylaws should define the leadership and membership composition, size of the board, how it will function. They should also identify the roles and duties of the president and officers, the rules and procedures for holding meetings, electing president and or appointing the officers, conflict of interest policies and procedures, quorum meetings, membership and voting, as well as voting rights, and the many other regulations and procedures that govern their Indian Parent Committee. Next slide, please. Next, we will review things to think about regarding IPC bylaws. Who develops the bylaws? The authorized parent committee develops the bylaws under the guidance of their leaders with the assistance of the Title VI staff if necessary. Do all members of the parent committee sign the parent committee approval form in the application? The statute says who must be on the committee, but not who signs the Indian Parent Committee form. The bylaws could state who signs the Indian Parent Committee approval form for the application. Can our school superintendent or principal be a member of the parent committee? Each IPC will have different bylaws. What might be correct in one district IPC might not be correct in another. Next slide, please. In regards to developing IPC bylaws, the above items are suggested. They can be adapted to meet your community's needs in collaboration with the LEA policies and procedures for establishing bylaws. Next slide. OIE formula bylaw template. You can find the OIE formula bylaw template on our Easy Communities of Practice website. Next slide. I'm turning this over to my colleague, Ms. Terry Nelson.
Thank you, Wanda.
You're welcome.
Okay. In regards to IPC roles and responsibilities, IPC meetings should be open to the public, announced in advance, and in coordination with the LEA. There may be times to hold closed sessions, but this should be explained in your bylaws. The IPC approves the Title VI application. The IPC approves the use or uses of Title VI funds and school-wide programs during the application phase only. The IPC establishes and abides by reasonable bylaws. The IPC consults with the LEA on the development, implications, and evaluation of the program. The parent committee should observe or enforce standard professional meetings, etiquette, protocol, and rules, and use standard note-taking to document proceedings. Refer to Robert's Rule of Order to direct any monitors your meetings. The bylaws set the composition, rules, and governance of the committee that advises the staff and LEA on the Title VI project. Members must abide by their established bylaws. The parent committee consults and approves new items for consideration and decisions on the agenda, the plans and continuing programs in the application. They also vote to approve the use of monies in a school-wide Title VI program. The Indian Parent Committee serves in an advisory capacity. The eligible entity receiving the grant funds is responsible for the financial and programmatic administration of the Indian Education Formula Grant Program. Next slide, please. Okay. The IPC may not do the following: set policies for the LEA, hire, fire, or supervise LEAs or project staff, directly administer the project, review personnel records or student ED FO6 forms without parental and entity leadership consent, commit or obligate funds for the LEA, approve or disapprove of use of funds post-award. Parent committees provide advice to the LEA Title VI staff during the grant application parts 1, 2, and 3. 3 is the APR planning, implementations, and budgetary changes. Next slide, please. In regards to LEA roles and responsibilities, the LEA roles and responsibilities are completely different from the IPC. The LEA ensures the program will be operated and evaluated with input from the IPC, administers the Title VI program and program services, employs and supervises the performance of project staff, physically administrates and obligates funds, maintains all grant records. Next slide, please. Next, we will review the relationship between the IPC and applicant or grantee pre and post-award. Pre-award, the IPC co-creates the annual application, approves the Title VI application, approves the use or uses of Title VI funds, establishes and abides by reasonable bylaws, consults with the LEA on the development, operation, and evaluation of the program through the application process. Pre-award application grantee must develop its Title VI project and easy application with the participation of the IPC if required. Share AI, AN state assessment data, conducts local needs assessment, develops applications, conducts public hearings. Post-award, the IPC establishes and abides by bylaws, conducts IPC meetings. Post-award, the applicants grantee administers the Title VI program and program services, employs and supervises the performance of project staff, physical administration and obligations of the funds, and maintains all grant records. Okay, next slide, please. Next, we will review additional things to consider regarding roles and responsibilities. What is the advisory role of the IPC? Does not set policies. The LEA's role is to set policies. The project director and our coordinator and parent committee abides by the statute and OESE policies for the local operation of the grant. The main emphasis of the IPC is to advise and does planning, implementation, and evaluation of the grant. What activities constitute program services and events? Academic reading and math, renovation, cultural and American Indian language, instructions and enrichment, health and wellness, increased school attendance, graduation, and college enrollment counseling constitutes the main grant objectives, which have many coordinated and associated program activities, services, and assessments. Most activities, events, services, and experiences needed to be tested to demonstrate results for the APR application 3. Test includes hard test, standardized, non-standardized, and benchmark, plus software measures, authentic assessments, and pre-post criterion tests. If results cannot be reported and measurable, then an anecdotal notes can be captured in the APR boxes. How may the LEA and PC conduct outreach to parents and family members? Outreach may be conducted to Indian students, parents, and family members through initial school registration, school/program, emails, public hearings, PC meetings, school and program newsletters, and Title VI cultural events. Next slide, please. Next, we will be reviewing types of concerns to address with OIE as they may arise. Here is the policy on items OIE should be contacted for. Anything dealing with meeting performance standards and complying with the grant requirements. If you see any areas that will migrate potential areas of concern, anything that has to do with grant administration or regulatory issues, as well as we want to receive feedback on grantees' successes and challenges associated with the grant implementation. OIE is particularly concerned with issues of concern or issues of the program office as we anticipate problematic areas. There is a link at the bottom of this slide to receive more information regarding OIE policies. Next slide, please. Additional items that OIE wants to know about are related to the application. When submitting the application in Part 2, the entity attests to these 4 items. These items attested that The legal authorization representative have read both program assurances forms, standard form 42 4B assurances, non-constructional programs and additional programs assurances for 84.060 Indian Education Formula Grants, and agree to their provisions. Note, you do not need to sign and mail in program assurances to the program office. Checking the checkbox is equivalent to a signature. You should keep a signed copy on file for your project records. All of the required student forms, ED 506 forms, are on file with the LEA and will be provided to the Office of Indian Education upon request. I certify that the parent committee participated in the development of the application submitted and approves the proposed application. I have uploaded the parent committee approval form. I certify that I am an employee authorized to legally bind the entity, and that by accepting the award for the Indian Education Formula Grant Program, the grantee will comply with the program assurances, agrees to carry out the program, and meet all applicable requirements described herein. I certify that, to the best of my knowledge, the information in this application is true, reliable, and valid, and I understand any false statement provided hereon that I have made is subject to penalties under the False Claims Act 18 USC 1001. If there are any concerns regarding any of the attestation statements and the identified process, please contact OIE. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Okay, with regards to existing concerns regarding the previous items, how do you contact your leadership and OIE? We would like you to follow the protocol that your entity has in place by following the grantee's organizational policy and procedures first. If possible, call and email. Number one, and then parent committee members. Number two, project directors / coordinator. Number three, federal program officers and our number four, superintendent and our authorized official representatives. Per the approved Title VI grant, call and email your OIE program officer anytime you have any concerns. Next slide, please. For your reference, here are important dates to remember. Easy Part 1 for SY 2021-22 will open on Monday, February 8th, 2021, and close on Thursday, March 11th on 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also view the Easy Part 1 webinar dates below. Next slide, please. Okay. We have also provided URLs or links for OIE and Title VI resources on this slide, including links to the Easy Communities of Practice, Office of Education, and the Department of Education websites as well. And Now I'm going to turn it over to Crystal.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate all of that. Lastly, we wanted to summarize, and if you can go to the next slide, please. We want to summarize some of the key points that were highlighted throughout this presentation. We know it's a lot, but we have a really good size audience here. So we wanted to cover as much material with you as possible to really tool you with as much content to help you be supportive. And if we can make sure everybody else is muted, maybe Terry, if you'll go on mute. Thanks. So in summary, number one, and I'm going to read straight from the slide because all of you are educators and it helps to read it as well as or to see it as well as hear it. So number one, bylaws must be co-drafted and co-approved by the IPC and LEA administration in a collaborative, bolded collaborative manner. So either the IPC or LEA should not be going off in a room all their own, or one person from each of those groups and drafting the bylaws and taking it to the other team and saying, here you go, please sign it. It needs to be a collaborative effort and collaborative in all regards. And we have provided you a template that we linked to in this earlier in the presentation. It's on both of our websites to get you started. We spent a good amount of time in the OIE formula team getting that template ready for you to go. So it's basically fill in the blank at this point, and then you can customize it as you need. But feel free to start with the template and then really make sure you're having solid conversations around those final bylaws and that everybody agrees to them before they're signed and ratified, because we will hold you to them. In absence of statute or in absence of ed policy, we go by your bylaws. And so we will ask for them if there is discrepancies or concerns or issues, which we've been getting a fair amount of. Number two, the IPC must meet at least once. So you must have one meeting that you review and approve or not approve. The IPC does not have to approve the application. And if we don't have an approved application from the IPC, we do not approve the funds to be awarded. So the grantee will get 0 funds. The IPC has a lot of power in this regard, and we trust that everybody will use it appropriately. But you must have one meeting where there's a review of the application and then a decision. So that is what the IPC form attests to. The chairperson or the designee is agreeing that there was one meeting that everybody reviewed the application and approved it. If we're getting that IPCA form. And so that is absolutely critical, and that has to be done every year before part 2 is due. And that's usually, part 2 is usually due around mid-May. We haven't published the final dates yet, but we will. And so please don't wait till the 11th hour and start that review meeting on May 1. Please, I would start those review meetings now, or that review meeting now, to make sure everybody's on the same page and there are no surprises. You don't want surprises right before the deadline. And we are seeing a bit of that this year. So please make sure. Now, if you want to have more than one meeting, great. We want this to be an ongoing dialogue, an ongoing conversation, an ongoing relationship between the Indian Parent Committee and the LEA administration. So noting on the screen there, OIE highly recommends that both the IPC members and the LEA team members make every attempt to work together in a collegial, respectful, and preferably kind manner for the sake of our collective Indian Ed students. So if we do not get assigned IPCA form that's legitimate with your application, we will deny the entire application. No questions asked. We did at least one of those last year. So it's a statutory requirement we take very seriously. And as Director Guerrero said at the beginning of this presentation, our IPCs are critical to the work we do. We lean on them a lot to help make our program culturally responsive, and we hold them in high regard. So we take it very seriously. Number 3, all IPC members must represent at least one student enrolled in the K-12 in the LEA that school year. So anybody in column A as a parent or guardian familial member of the IPC, so column A of the table on page 2 of the IPCA form, all of those folks have to have at least one student currently enrolled for that school year in the entity, in the applicant. So it can't be, your student left and moved to a different school district, or you're homeschooling them, or maybe if you are homeschooling, that we did have one case that was allowable because they were partnered with the school district, but they must be on the books enrolled in the LEA that current year. So, and then fourthly, Indian parents must be 51% of the committee. This is a lot of the modifications we see on our review process with all of our program officers. We kick a lot of applications back for this because you must, the folks in column A of that table, page 2 of the IPCA form, you must have at least one more in that column than you do of the total combined of columns B, C, and D. So say that you have one tribal rep, one teacher, one student, that's 3. You must have 3 plus 1 parents. So that would be 4 parents or family members. And we do allow grandparents, aunts, uncles, family members to serve in column A as an Indian parent. Getting lots of questions in the Q&A about even more details of the composition of the Indian Parent Committee. Please review that Q&A because there's a lot of good content in there and excellent questions. So, so that's the high-level summary and lessons learned over the past year and beyond. So I'll stop talking there and just, we have some questions for you to help guide this. If you have other questions we haven't already answered in the chat or the Q&A panel, other questions beyond the 4 you see there, please let us know. And if our contractor can help moderate those questions.
Dr. Moore, if you would like to proceed with questions from the chat.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let me just also address that I'm seeing multiple requests for copies of this presentation. So yes, absolutely. Copies of the actual slide deck as well as the recording. And then thankfully to our contractor, they will also provide a transcript. And all of those items will be made available on both the websites I put in the chat. So OESE-.gov, and it's our Indian education. So we'll put those back in the chat for you, but with 2 websites, both for OIE Indian Ed formula pages. So that will all be made available. Okay. Now, I'm seeing some great questions in the Q&A. So if you're not already there, there's on your bottom toolbar, there's it's like in the middle of the page and it's Q&A and 2 like bubble clouds. I'm just gonna start. I've already answered a bunch. I've already answered a significant amount. Several questions about the composition of parents on the Indian Parent Committee in general, and then on that form. So there's a table on page 2 of the form, and column A is parents, family members, and column B is tribal reps, column C is school employees or teachers, and column D is students. So column A, parents and family, it has to be 50, this is per the statute, 51% parents or family members. And so you would total up columns B through D. And so the updates to the form say this on there now. So what I'm telling you will be on the form, which hopefully will make it a lot easier for you, which is why we did those edits. But if you total up column B through D, so you have 1 tribal rep, 1 teacher, 1 school employee, or 1 student, that's 3 people, 1 per column. And then you would have to have 3 plus 1 or 51% in column A of parents and families. So basically the statute requires that parents, family members have the voting majority, right? And so I think they answered Jillian Murr's question at 2:44. And so Christy Snyder, let's see, I'm going to quickly try to find yours. If we, as stated at the very beginning of this presentation, if you missed it maybe, if we don't get to all of your questions during this presentation, during this session, engagement session, we will follow up in email. And so I believe we have all of your emails per your registration to log into this Zoom. And so we will follow up, and then we'll also put the transcript of the Q&A on our website. So you, even if we don't get to you, and we'll try to, but even if we don't worry, we will respond to all your questions. Our goal is to fully resource you and tool you with these IPCAs to make everybody as successful as possible to the benefit of our students. Okay, can you repeat the dates? So I put that in the maybe the chat and the Q&A. The dates are not fully ready to publish yet. They should be forthcoming. We typically get them fully published around the middle of January. So we're right about there. And they'll be published in the Federal Register. So hopefully you all are used to using that. We will also put them on both of our websites. Typically part 1 opens at the beginning of February. The first week-ish of February, and then it typically closes the middle of March, second week of March. And then part 1 is your Indian student count, basically, and then your entity type. What type are you coming in as? Is it a BIE school, or is it an LEA? And then you also report your Indian student count. So make sure you validated all your ED 506 forms. And then, so part 1 will close around mid-March, and then we reopen shortly thereafter, around the second week of April for part 2. And part 2 is really kind of the meat of the application. That's where the Indian Parent Committee approval form is required, and that's part 2 typically closes around mid-May. And you must upload a signed, approved Indian Parent Committee approval form where the person attests there was at least one meeting to review and approve the application. And so that usually is around mid-May. And then we've been doing a pretty good job of getting awards out by the beginning of July now. So I hope that helps with the timelines. But we will publish all the official dates in writing on our websites, as well as the Federal Register in the next couple of weeks, if not next week. So, okay, so I think I'm going to go down Rhiannon Fuller at 2:53. It looks like this signature is the only power of the IPCA. So the signature is an attestation. The signature is an attestation of the chairperson or the designee stating that the LEA did their required actions, which was the IPC has the power to review and approve or deny the application. So the IPC's real power is reviewing and approving or denying the application. So, and that's a lot of power. The form is a symbol of that, is a document attesting to that. But the power for the IPC per the statute, or the authority, whatever term you want to use, of the IPC is the final approval or denial of that application per the review. I hope that helps. Michael Lowry at 2:59. I'm working with IPC within my district to encourage them to be proactive and engaged in the development of the plan. Absolutely, that's perfect. I think this is a potential power that is overlooked, but I can understand you, Michael. We totally agree. Yes, it's a lot of influence, power, authority, all of those words surrounding that. Yeah, you want them as proactive, engaged, and so respectful, collegial, collaborative, kind interactions, relationships are critical to that proactive and engagement in the development of the plan, because we want the plan to be culturally responsive for the academic and cultural needs of our students, right? And on our state map, it highlights we serve Title VI-A Part 1, subpart 1 serves almost 500,000 students across the nation. We would love to serve more. So that is our goal. As a parent committee, what can we do? So Rhiannon Fuller, 258, what can we do if there are regulations that we feel are not beneficial to our children or Native community? I would have to know more about what those regulations you're referring to are. If there is something we can help you with, that may be like more standard operating procedures versus regulations by the school district. If they're federal statute regulations, that's a pretty complex answer. If they're localized, it depends. So if you want to email me or oie.ez@ed.gov what regulations you're referring to, if we can be helpful at all, well, whether or not we'll respond either way, but we will do our best to kind of help guide you on what to do if you would like to update regulations or standard operating procedures. We do this a lot, by the way. A lot of my day is with those kind of conversations. Okay. Jillian, so if they are not if a person is not a teacher and they have a student at the school, they would go in column A. If they're a tribal rep, that's and they're a parent, official tribal reps, and I put this a lot in the answered column, official tribal reps must have official delegation from the tribe. And that delegation must be on file with the school district in case we ever request it. So a person can't just be a tribal member and show up to the IPC and say, hey, I'm officially representing the tribe. If they're a tribal rep, they must have official delegation from the tribe on file. We like all sorts of tribal participation, the more the merrier, but in order to be considered the tribal rep, there needs to be an official delegation. And so if, of course, if an Indian parent is also a tribal member, that's the goal, right? They're an Indian parent, and so they would still go in column A. Okay. And as an Indian-based community organization, what would be the best way to collect 506 forms? This could be a pretty complex answer, Samantha Williams at 306. I would recommend reaching out to your program officer. My initial answer will be work with the LEA as best as possible. But there could be multiple answers to that and multiple levels of answers to that. So I recommend you you work with your program officer, and I highlighted the regions the program officers serve in the, I think it was like on slide 5. It's with all their smiling faces. Okay, Charlie Bauer, can you define with more detail conflict of interest is defined for your office? Well, there's an official statutory term on conflict of interest, but basically, I'm going to give you an informal answer, and then we can send you the formal definition. But in general, it's basically serving two masters. So meaning that if a person was a school employee, they should be listed under column C because they are paid by the school district and not 100% solely representing the parent-based interests, right? So they are a parent, so they do have this interest, but they're also paid by the district. So that keyword is also X, Y, or Z, or maybe they're serving on 2 different committees that have conflicting values or conflicting priorities. That's the general answer, but we can give you like the full legal answer. Okay, if you can put your question, comment in the chat or email it to us, we will certainly be more than happy to respond as best as possible. We've got some good questions in the chat here going on. Is there, Teresa Erickson's 310, is it a conflict of interest for the program director's family to serve on the IPC? So it does get a little interesting. I'll leave it at that too, because oftentimes a lot of our entities have such small pools, small universes to pull or to, that's PULL, to source their Indian parent family members for that column A. So we have to be careful of being too limiting because, you know, in some communities, Indian communities, everybody's related in one way or another. And the main employer in the area is the school districts. And so, so if we're too limiting, then we end up with nobody on the Indian Parent Committee. And so, because everybody is connected 1 to 2 degrees of separation, usually, oftentimes. And so the goal is inclusive and culturally responsive inclusivity. And the goal is to make people feel welcome and to ensure that they're serving the needs of our Indian students. And so we wouldn't inherently flag a program director's family serving on the IPC as a parent or family member, which is what I think you're asking. We want to include people as much as possible. We also want to be sure that there's full disclosure about those relationships and everybody's transparent about potential bias. But we would not have an issue from OIE on the outset on a high level overview if a program director's family member was also on column A of the Indian Parent Committee approval form. So without, you know, absent of other issues. So hope that helps. Kathy, you're welcome on the tribal representation. Kathy has an item in the chat. Yes, the key for inviting tribal representatives as well as parents and other folks is you have to do your due diligence. LEAs must do a good faith concerted effort to get different folks to participate, whether it's parents or tribal reps, especially tribal reps, because you noted and we agree that tribes are sovereign and they can decline to participate. You know, everybody's super busy and there's a lot extra going on post-COVID world. And so they can say, thank you for the invite, but I just don't have time, or I don't have one more person to send. And we understand that. And so, but LEAs must document that they did a good faith effort reaching out to all the tribes within a 50-mile radius that have at least one student enrolled in the LEA. That's also a key factor. The tribe must have a child enrolled in the LEA. They must be within that 50-mile boundary. And so documented outreach, good faith outreach, not just a random generic email. I mean, it really has to be a good faith effort. And we do review those and look for those. I just monitored for one last week. So it's really important to us that tribes every attempt is made to include tribes at every part of this. There's also meaningful collaboration, tribal consultation if it applies under 8538. So our goal is respectful collegial collaboration with all entities. Because that's being culturally responsive. Okay, going back to the Q&A, Kimberly Zaw, excellent question. Can a digital copy be accepted for an ED 506 form? If so, is there anything we need to document for the accepting of the digital form? We made recently, over the past few years, we have updated the ED 506 form to be a fillable PDF. So absolutely, you can provide your students, their families with that digital copy. It's available on both of our websites. And if somebody has the chance to put it in the chat, that would be great, Annabelle or Wanda. And it can also be electronically signed. So if the LEA has those policies and procedures in place, it's a big if. I would say most that we've seen do. I've not heard any that don't, but the LEA must have as part of their standard operating procedures, their approvals, that they will and can accept electronic signatures. So, but yes, we've updated the 8506 form to be a fillable PDF that can also be electronically signed if your district allows that. Great question, Cindy, back in the chat. Do we have the form that needs to be completed by the tribe to designate the official tribal representative to the IPC? We do not have a specific form from OIE. And so there is no currently a form. So it could be an email, it could be a form that you generate within your school district. It could also be a phone call that gets documented, say via follow-up email. We just need some sort of documentation that states there was a good faith effort. So, and the same is true for meaningful collaboration, which is another required component for part 2. I hope that helps, Cindy. If not, please respond again. Okay, so Jillian, what if there are no tribes within 50 miles, but we get over the dollar amount listed? I think, Jillian, you are referring to that $40,000 threshold for tribal consultation required under Section 8538. And okay, so again, documented a good faith effort. I do need to, since 8538 is outside of Title VI, I do want to go back and look at the exact requirements if there are no tribes. I know for our Title VI program for meaningful collaboration, if you would just state on your application that there are no tribes within your 50-mile radius. But I will also, if somebody on our OIE team can put a link to that meaningful collaboration tribal consultation chart we have a really great chart, Jillian, that lists all the specific requirements of that tribal consultation under 8538 versus meaningful collaboration versus open consultation and the Indian Parent Committee. So we'll put that in the chat. And I'll get to that if somebody else doesn't. And then definitely we will follow up with you about the 8538 tribal consultation of 40,000. Okay, thank you. We are a small school. This is Jesse Sneed at 321. Less than 250 to maintain. I would, is that 250 Indian student count with 8506s on file, or is that a total student count of everybody? We keep the original signed forms in a fireproof cabinet in yearly files. So I think you're maybe asking, Jesse, if you should, okay, if you should intersperse or disperse those forms, 8506 forms, into individual student files. If they're individual student printed files, hard copy files, I mean, that's up to you. I think we see that both ways. It may, you know, if we ever do a monitoring, we will request all of your forms. If we ever do a monitoring on you, when we do monitorings, we request copies of all the forms. So it may be less effort for you to pull one folder of all the forms that are together. That's a great SOP question. It would likely be easier for you to pull just the one folder of all your 8506 students versus having to go student by student in various cabinets. But we don't require one or the other. They just need to be available upon request. Dorothy, Wanda or Annabelle, could you put the link to our, oh, it looks like, okay. Karen, thanks for sharing yours from Oklahoma. We can, Wanda or Annabelle will also put the one from our website too, but Karen, we really appreciate that. And, okay, so moving down, Christine Redford, and thank you for your patience as I'm reading through these and answering. I really, really wish we'd be able to unmute you, but hopefully my hope is that you will be thinking of additional questions as I'm going through and maybe reading some of these. So, and we have a hard stop at 4 o'clock, so we have a little bit more time. And please give us all the questions now. You can. Christine Redford, great. So this is perfect. Please feel free to be commenting to each other and sharing ideas. That's really the goal of this engagement session, is for you to also engage with each other. We encourage peer-to-peer sharing. If you're on a listserv, you should have got an invite to our new Facebook group. And that's the entire goal of that Facebook group, is to encourage sharing between participants, between our grantees. We have a lot of experts on this call beyond OIE employees. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're supporting each other and providing each other help, because all the answers I'm seeing are great. So thank you, Annabelle, for this. So Annabelle, our wonderful program officer for our kind of eastern half of the US grantees, she just put the fillable PDF in the chat for you. So Christine, excellent, 323, she keeps them all together in one file. Yeah, I think it's just, I think most of our grantees just feel that's easier, but it's up to you. Is there a process for meeting assurances and hiring personnel? That's a more entailed question. So I believe the statute, and don't quote me on this, but we can follow up on this one as well. But my understanding is there has to be a due diligence. So a good faith effort to hire somebody who is native, and preferably someone who's native in a neighboring tribe of the school district. So school districts are not 100% required to hire a native who applies, but there is a preference. And so, and forgive me if I misstate something, I'm not an HR professional, but based on my read, the district needs to do a good faith effort in giving preference to the native, to the tribal member. However, if say there's a huge disparity between the tribal member and the non-tribal member, maybe of course, if the tribal member has significant increased capacity over the other applicants, that person would be likely hired, should be hired according to the statute. If the non-native has significantly higher qualifications, there may be a justification to hire that person. So it's not an absolute requirement to hire the native, it's a preference. And there are very specific HR rules and laws around that, and I 100% defer to those. And working with your HR professional in your school district, they should be very aware of that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pop back over to David Devine at 329 in the chat. His question is, do I understand that inviting the tribal reps to the IPC meeting is enough to meet the requirements for meaningful collaboration? It's a due diligence, good faith effort invite. So it can't be, hey, we're having a meeting, please join us at 3 p.m. for coffee, right? It needs to be a solid good faith effort, due diligence effort to invite the tribal reps to be part of the IPC, as well as to meaningfully collaborate. That needs to be documented in writing. And we require a summary of that documentation, or at least that documentation in the application for meaningful collaboration. We and you cannot require tribal leaders or tribal reps to participate in either the IPC or the meaningful collaboration. However, the LEA needs to make a really good faith effort, a solid meeting time, an agenda, all of the items that go into a valid meeting. So I hope that helps. Okay. Now, if you do a good faith effort, I'll say one more thing about that. If you do a good faith effort and you reserve the room, you send out the invite, you do everything you need to do to have a solid meeting, and the tribal leader says, hey, I just can't make it. This is important. We really want to, we just can't do it this year because we've fully tasked with everything else. Totally get it. It's okay. And at least the LEA tried, right? And again, it has to be tribes within 50-mile radius, and keyword, and they have a student enrolled in the LEA. Karen Record, the current 8506 form expires. Yes, we will always provide you. I mean, it's a rare thing, if ever, that a form will expire before we don't provide you with a new one. Does it happen in some offices? Maybe, but we will absolutely provide you with an updated form before the current one expires, if not sooner. Okay. Kathy Dunn back in the chat. I think it might be stressed that schools can't just pick and choose what tribes they invite. In small schools, that happens at times. Kathy, 100% agree. And if you have those concerns, be mindful again, 50-mile radius and students enrolled in the school. So you may have, 3 or 4 tribes, and they're wonderful tribes. However, they have no children enrolled in the school, or no students from the tribe enrolled in school. The LEA is not required to invite them per the statute. So that's what the law says. So, but yes, we do stress that, and Kathy 100% agree that if they meet those criteria, they should be invited. Okay, and then, yeah, and do LEAs try to circumvent the rules? Does any human try to circumvent the rules sometimes? Yes, but we want to know about it. If tribes that should be included or not, we want to know about it. If IPCs are not following the rules as outlined on the form, we want to know about it. So, and we will follow up. I spend a lot of my day, most days, dealing with these kinds of things, and we will follow up on every complaint and every concern. Okay, can you please answer Matt R's question in Q&A at 3:28? Sure, let's see. Matt, on the 506 form, what does if readily available mean? Okay, good question, Matt. So you do not, on the ED 506 form, and this it's outside of IPC, but they're connected, so we'll go ahead and answer to you. You do not have to provide, a student does not have to provide their enrollment number. Like, I would not have to write my enrollment number on my daughter's 506 form or my 506 form when I was enrolled in school. But there does have to be some proof. So if you don't provide a form, if it's not readily available, or you just don't want to put it, it's not absolutely required, but proof is required. So if you don't provide the number, then we need something else as outlined on the form. And it's, I get some forms returned without a membership or enrollment number. So again, Matt, as long as they're giving you proof of membership, and that could be, and maybe they're not a member, maybe the student is not a member, that's okay. They can still have a valid ED 506 because they proved lineage back to a grandparent. You can only go back as far as a grandparent. But maybe they provided their grandparents' tribal membership card or their CDIB card, and then birth certificates going back to their grandparent. Maybe, yeah, so maybe the parents or the child aren't members, but the grandparent was, and there's proof going back to them. We just need that all copied or collated with the ED 506 form. So the proof and the form have to be together. You don't have to have an enrollment number. Okay, great. Yeah, I know it's pretty complex. And we will have a different session just on ED 506 because we do get a lot of those questions. This session is specifically about IPC. Happy to, answer those types of questions too, but they each deserve their own engagement session because they're both equally important and complex. Okay, great, Matt. So Kathy Dunn, 3:30, we have our committee members in place, but if tribal members from multiple tribes are at our meetings, can they be listed? Well, they need to be voted in according to your bylaws. So if they're going to be on the Indian Parent Committee, let me read the question, I'm sorry. So we have our committee members in place, but if tribal members from multiple tribes are at our meetings, can they be listed on the IPC form? And that's Kathy Dunn at 3:30. So Kathy, again, if, and I'm happy to repeat this as many times because it is complex. I often have to go back and reread the statute and I deal with this every day. So Kathy, they have to have a student enrolled in the school. They have to represent a student enrolled in the school to be on the Indian Parent Committee. So if that is true, if they do have a student enrolled in the school, then there also should be bylaws in place. It's a statutory requirement that all grantees will have bylaws in place within 6 months of receiving their award. So according to those bylaws, if you have a person consistently attending Indian Parent Committee meetings, then yeah, get them voted in or take a vote if the committee wants them on the meeting, right? The committee gets to vote to add members or not. So follow your bylaws, make sure you all have bylaws. They are, we recommend them for IPCs and LEAs because it just makes the rules clear and generally helps with relations because everybody's aware of what the rules are. So following your bylaws, which typically would include a vote of new committee members, take a vote on including those folks on the IPC or not, and then you can move forward as long as they have a student enrolled in this. I hope that helps. So, okay, let me scroll down and on the Q&A link to 506 form, it's not working. Annabelle, Miss Annabelle, can you please check that ED 506 form? Let me see if it works for me really quick. Oh yeah, it did work for me, Miss Beatty at 3:31. So it's not a broken link. Annabelle, can you please just put a link to can you please put a link to our community of practice? And then maybe a link to the form on the community of practice site. Let's see if that is better for Jennifer. Okay. Oh, great. I heard Annabelle.
Yes, I did in a previous chat up above. I took the link from Easy Part 1, that link that has the blue button right in the middle when you log on to the COP site. Right in the middle has that blue link to the ED 506 form. I grabbed that in. I will do it again so that while we're all on, we can make sure that it works. Okay.
Great. And Annabelle, while you're talking, can you, do you want to add anything to that Indian preference hiring?
Yes, that is on the program assurances on Indian preference. Under the Indian preference section, under the program assurances is the LEA reaching out to the Indian community to hire Indian preference from the community. So when that takes place, you can have that as part of your program records, because that program assurance is signed by the superintendent or someone at his level when they sign those program assurances. So you want to download them and keep them on file as part of your program records.
Okay, very good. Yeah, that's helpful. All
So
right.
I'm grabbing the link from the COP site under Easy Part 1, where we have the click here to access the Title VI ED 506 form. And I'm going to drop it into the webinar chat. Let's see here. I guess I can just drop it anywhere.
Okay. And Annabelle, while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to some more questions, see if we can get through
Okay.
one of these before we end. And then Annabelle, actually, if you have time, you're Wanda, if you can put the meaningful collaboration tribal consultation table chart that we updated this year in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Teresa Erickson at 332, can IPC require monthly volunteer hours of programming? So Teresa, as stated in the presentation, I mean, we would love IPCs to be members to be involved as much as possible. Sometimes IPC members don't have the time, and sometimes it's not, I don't know, it doesn't require that much effort. It's not necessary, but the effort is not required. But whatever the IPC wants to do, I think that's great. It's getting as many parents involved as possible. You would just need to negotiate that with your Indian Parent Committee members and maybe put it into your bylaws. So we don't require it. We only require, as stated in the presentation, we require one meeting where the application is reviewed in its entirety. So the final application is reviewed in that one meeting, and either there's a vote to either approve or deny it. And then if it's approved, the chairperson signs the Indian Parent Committee approval form, and that gets submitted by the LEA with the application. So I hope that helps. Adding on to Matt's question, we get CDIB cards that show descendancy. Can those count? Yes, they can count. Looking at the ED 506 form now, that would fall under, let's see, it's on page 1, middle way through the page. There's the tribe or band, select only one, and it would be, so there's federally recognized tribe, state recognized, terminated tribe, Alaska Native, and the 5th radial button is member, no, sorry, that's not the one. There's one that is as recognized by the Secretary of the Interior, which would be the CDIB card. So that is the allowance. Okay, there's other evidence establishing membership. That would be the birth certificate. Okay. I'm not seeing. I'm going to have to find it where it says the recognized by the Secretary of Interior, but we do, forgive me, we do allow, oh, here it is. It's on page 2, definitions. So it's number 3, considered by the Secretary of the Interior to be an Indian for any purpose. And that's at the top of page 2 under definitions, item number 3. Sorry, it took me a minute to find that. Okay. So yeah, CDIB cards are totally allowable. We do not require a blood quantum at all. We get that question quite a bit, so I'll just go ahead and say that. There is no minimum required blood quantum for Title VI. You can use CDIBs, you can use tribal member cards, but we must have one of those items as defined on page 2 of the ED 506 one. Okay, Charlie Bauer at 342. How do we address the equity issue and the legal implications when policy is interpreted literally and has no room for preference? Need a little more information on what equity issues you're referring to. Of course, equity is incredibly important to us, and so I want to make sure that I understand that question fully. Charlie, if we don't get to your question fully by the end of the session, please feel free to email me, crystal.moore@ed.gov, or your assigned program officer, or indian.education@ed.gov. That's our internal. So indian.education@ed.gov. And we'll try to get your question fully answered. I just need a little bit more of what you're talking about with which equity issue. Okay, so Josh at 347 in the chat, yes, we will make both the webinar chat and the Q&A available, both questions and answers. And again, the recording will be available, so you'll get all these verbal answers. And then there will also be a transcript. Thanks to Director Guerrero, who made this engagement session available to us, which means the transcript will be available too. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for attending. Our goal is to fully equip you tool you in order to make these IPC efforts as successful and meaningful as possible. They, again, are critically important to us. So I'm going to work up here on the chat now. On the COP site under Easy Part 2 program is where you find meaningful collaboration travel consultation table. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Annabelle. Jillian in Oregon, yes. Greg is your assigned program officer. He's actually on leave for like the next week. So feel free to send that to me, crystal.moore@ed.gov. You had an in-depth question. And I'll answer in his absence. Yes, of course, Jillian, anytime. Okay. I think we may have got through all the Q&A and the chat. Did I miss anything? Okay. All of these questions are needed and warranted and helpful. We can only help if we know what's happening. And we would love to get to a spot where everybody's just working together perfectly for the benefit of our students. In the meantime, we are here to support you. So no question is out of bounds and no question is unwarranted, right, from what I've seen. You, Dorothy, Mary Lou, Jillian, you're all welcome. Yes, Samantha, the bylaws template. Yes, ma'am. That's also on part 2 on Easy. Annabelle, do you have a minute to put the,
Yes.
I can drop that in.
Yeah. We are really proud of that document, by the way, Samantha and team, because OIE has been around for 50 years. So the formula program's been around for 50 years. And we just got this template published, I think it was last year. So it was a lot of work. We are very proud of it. It's not perfect, but it's much better than what we had, which was nothing. And so, yeah, Kathy, I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We still got 9 minutes. We'll hang out until 4 o'clock. We're diehards on these types of things. So we'll be here. And then again, if you don't get your question in before 4 o'clock, just email me, crystal.moore@ed.gov or indian.education@ed.gov or your program officer. We are here to serve you. So Annabelle's been here for 20 years in the office. This is my 3rd year as the group leader. Wanda's been here for 7 years. Terry's been in and out of OIE for 30 years. So we're here. Yeah, Kathy, you're most welcome. We love our tribes. Absolutely. Wanda, Annabelle, myself, we're all tribal members, have huge tribal member families. So we are definitely committed to our tribes, and we're committed to our LEAs, and we're committed to our kids, and everybody working together for their benefit. Okay. Emmett, you're most welcome. We try to be as helpful as possible. So always reach out. Caitlin, yes, ma'am. It's pretty easy. Crystal.moore@ed.gov. Mahogany or Brittany, can you go back to the OIE contact page? I think it was like slide 5-ish. So everybody can see emails. Christine, you're most welcome. Thank you for spending 2 hours. Apologies for the extra reading. I know that's not the most fun way to start out a presentation. However, the vast majority of it's required just to make sure we're meeting everybody's accommodations, reasonable accommodations. So yeah, perfect. Excellent. That's the one. So here's your OIE formula team on the screen. And then you also met our director, Julian Guerrero. He's excellent. So we work together very well to support you. Catherine, great. I'm glad we got to answers for you. Yeah, and I like to have answers in real time. So I don't like to wait 3 weeks to get a response to a question. So I too appreciate it. So I'm glad that it worked out this way. I wish we could have heard you all talk. That would have been better. Yeah, great. Great. Annabelle, excellent. Annabelle put the bylaw template for you in the chat, everybody. Please do that. It saves a lot of confusion. And if there's ever discrepancy between the LEA and the IPC, and it's not outlined in statute, I will ask for bylaws. I just did that last week for a grantee where we have concerns with. So, yes, thank you to everybody. Yeah, Cookie and my Choctaw. Yeah, great. That's the goal of an engagement session, is for Nokomis, is for everybody to work together. Thank you for being patient with me talking so much. Excellent. Nokomis says you have additional questions, reach out to your program officer, reach out to me, indian.education@ed.gov. We want to make sure you're supported. I cannot tell you enough how important IPCs are to us. You are the blood to the program, extremely important. Cindy, excellent question at 3:54. Do we have an overview training? Yes, ma'am. We last year we started a new project directors webinar, and that is recorded, archived on our website as well. Annabelle, can you help us out one more time and put that PowerPoint slide deck webinar recording?
Yes. I already saw the question. I jumped to it and I'm ready to drop the link in here.
You were so quick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I must have sent my personal link to my Indian education. Oh, Kathy. Yeah, that happens to the best of us too. Well, we think you're extra smart because of all the questions you asked. We will get Wanda to come meet with you in February if she's available. Oh, she would love to meet with you. She always loves those meetings. Yes. So well, I know Wanda will be more than happy to attend your February meeting. Kathy, you can ask as many questions as you want, and so can your people. Annabelle, excellent. home run again. There's a link to the new project director webinar slide deck in the chat for you all. Thanks to your Annabelle. Okay, great, Linda. Thank you so much for the feedback. We appreciate it. We do our best. Yes, Annabelle, that's the one, November 3rd. Shelby, anytime. Great. Okay, so I'm seeing Teresa Oatman at 3:54 in the Q&A. I would just like to say that I've been working as project coordinator for over 15 years. The first year I started, easy application was typed. Yes, I know. Annabelle remembers those days. The first year I started, easy was, the following year it was changed to electronic. Oh, wow, you came right in the changeover and had a training in Portland. Wow. Yes, Bernard Garcia was with us for a long time. But I would like to just say it is nice to see how much it has grown and become so sophisticated. Thank you so much. Teresa, thank you so much. And I know that you have, you're being very kind. We've had a few bumps and bruises along the way, but we're trying. And so we thank you for your patience and your kind review. Thank you. We're so glad to have you. Yes, Jordan, I think Annabelle is putting that in the link. Annabelle did put it in the link about 5 chats up, but I'm going to put it again for you. And that is going to Jordan. All right, we have about 2 minutes left. So, anything else we can help you? If we didn't cover it here, or if you didn't feel comfortable asking a question, I know sometimes that happens. I totally understand. You can email it privately to, you have all our contact information on the screen right now. Email it privately to your program officer, to myself. We will respond to you for sure. So, and it looks like that Easy Community of Practice link is not coming through. So we will email that out to everybody after the session again. So link is on the Q&A, not the chat. Yeah, it's actually, I think it's on the chat. Anyhow, we'll email out the links. It's also on our Community of Practice website, our COP site. You should have access to that. We will email it out to you. But again, if there's something that you didn't ask or couldn't ask or didn't feel comfortable asking, email us directly, privately, if it's more maybe sensitive nature, and we understand that, we will respond and support you. So, and with that, Mahogany, I turn it back to you. Last minute closeouts. Thank you.
Crystal, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So yes, we are, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.